Hello, wonderful. It is Sarah, and I'm here with Tori Autumn talking about how to love yourself again after a toxic relationship. Hey, Tori, how are you?
Hi Sarah, I'm doing well. How about you?
Oh, good. Going good. We before we hit record, we realized we had some commonalities as far as other than our blue shirts, but commonalities as far as knowing having family members in my area. So excited about the conversation. Tori, how do you love yourself again after a toxic relationship? What a big question, right?
Definitely a big question. I'm excited to dive in about that, and I just want to thank you again for us getting to talk about this conversation. Much needed topic.
Much needed.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind, I would like to just start with how how some women or some people lose themselves in a toxic relationship and why it's important to love yourself again.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that the biggest core piece of that is just that self-worth piece. Like just feel like I'm not doing enough, I'm not good enough. I need constant approval from my spouse, and that is creating an atmosphere for you to just kind of put everything else on the back burner that you really love to do or that means a lot to you, or even speaking up for things that you feel like is wrong, and you just kind of lose that authentic part of you that you once really loved and once felt empowered by. So I think that the first step is recognizing that you're you're so powerful for one, being able to leave that toxic relationship or even starting to make
Endure it, even to endure it, right? Like it's like, oh, people in toxic relationships, they're broken or whatever. It's like, man, they've been like living in war and
yes.
surviving it and finding ways to keep going to work and keep raising kids or keep whatever it is, right? That's so much strength.
It's so much strength. It's so much strength, and it's just it speaks volumes to how much we think we can handle in life. So it is important to know that you are way stronger and more powerful than you believe. And then the next thing is just recognizing that all the things that matter to you are real and they're true, and it doesn't really matter so much as to how you even got into a toxic relationship, because I know a lot of women who feel like I'm smart. I don't know how I just missed the cues and the signals and,
Uh-huh,
and the basketball
uh-huh.
and the volleyball. Like I don't know how I missed that. And it has nothing to really do with, intelligence, but it just has things to do on the surface level, the things that we see in this partner, and we see like one hand being shown to us, and but we don't see the hand behind their partner's back. So we just really need to take into consideration, when it comes to loving ourselves and then loving the next partner. Does this feel good to me? Does this
Mm.
feel like I'm connecting more with myself? Do I feel like I can be myself around this person? And
Mhm.
also, a lot of women, I know, especially for me, when I was in a toxic relationship, it was really hard to break out of people pleasing. And so I wanted to share some of the top 6 ways that you know if you're a people pleaser.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I know my listeners like, oh dang, she's gonna be talking about me.
Yeah, and I'm talking about myself too, because I definitely
Yeah.
been there.
That's why I say when I'm raising my hand, not pointing my finger, it's like, me too, me
Yes,
too. Yes.
exactly. So
Okay, so tell us about people pleasing. Rah, rah, rah.
yes, yes. The first one is you don't like confrontation. So it just makes you feel uncomfortable. And generally speaking, we're all humans. We don't like pain. We like
Yeah.
trying to get to the good stuff and the pleasure and stuff. But you really try to avoid confrontational situations. So even though you may have a thought, that guilt might be eating inside you. Like, I want to say this, but I don't even feel like, being ridiculed for my thoughts, or, being gaslighted, just those things that comes
Well,
up.
and in a healthy relationship, you don't have to think about that stuff, right? Like even as you and I, we just met, but I'm not thinking like, oh, I gotta watch everything I say around her. She's gonna gaslight me, manipulate me, and turn it around. I'm gonna feel like a less person, right? And there's people in our life that we feel kind of safe conversations with,
Mm-hmm.
and then people in our life who we have unsafe conversations with. Is that kind of how you differentiate if someone's toxic?
Yes, yes, that's actually a really great way to put it. Yeah, it really is about that safety feeling.
Yeah.
emotionally, and just feeling comfortable with that.
Comfortably who you are. I loved when you said being yourself, right? And that's a point I want to keep coming, like bring women back to for sure. Yeah.
Yes, great point. And then the next one is you're incapable of saying no in fear of hurting someone else's feelings.
I think there's a little puppy in the back saying no. It's like, hey, girls.
Yeah, she's asking me to feed her, but
She's welcome on the podcast too. I love all these Zoom things from home. Before we got on here, my husband was like making tea, and I was like, "Sorry, Tori," you know.
Yeah, no worries.
It's real life. Real life podcasting during coronavirus where none of us can leave, right?
Exactly. But yeah, saying no is just really hard. So, but I want you to look at it as, if I keep saying yes to someone else, what am I saying no to for myself?
Yeah.
What am I denying myself of time, of money, of attention, of all of those great things. So that's a common thing in people.
In respect.
Yes.
Right? Like, we lose our self-respect when we're trying to earn someone else's respect constantly, or only respecting them and their needs and ignoring ours, right?
Yes. Totally. And I think that in terms of, sorry about this dog.
It's fine.
Yeah. And then it leads into the next one, when you don't like to admit when your feelings get hurt. Like, a lot of people are like brushing it off. They still want to come off as strong, which I don't really like to say it as, how when we are upset, or when we see someone crying, or when we're crying and someone's like, it's okay, don't cry. But sometimes, crying doesn't mean it's a weakness. Admitting that your feelings are hurt is not a weakness. It's not a weakness. And so it's important for you to have that self realization that this is an uncomfortable feelings. These things that my partner is telling me, or these things that my partner have done to me, do not make me feel good about myself. And so that's definitely a key piece with that. And another thing, if you're a people pleaser, you might be adopting your behavior based on others around you. So even if you just came home and you had a great day at work, you got all of this praise about your work ethic, and then you see your husband or your spouse just having a bad day, you just feel like, I have to now dim my light.
Dim my light. Love that language. I want to point it out. Yes. In toxic relationship, you're always dimming your light.
Yes. Always trying to figure out ways where I can, let other people shine around me but what that doing is it's making you feel small, and it's making you feel like you have to take up less space. And I just feel like once you make that change and that subtle shift to get from leaving that toxic relationship, and now, being single and just owning just your individuality, don't be afraid to take up space, especially for us women. Like, we have so many, signals throughout life, indirectly, like, don't be too loud, don't dress too loud, don't do this, don't be
too much.
Don't be too much. Yes. That's a good one. Don't be too much. And or someone, and especially when it comes to relationships, right? Don't be too much, or a man will think you're too much if you're too loud. And I know a lot of women who say that they try to make sure they're not cursing or acting obnoxious on first dates and stuff. Even though that's a big part of them, they have to feel like they have to tone themselves down, or a man won't accept them for who they are. But I'm sure you and I could think of 10 women who are in marriages and they curse like a sailor,
Absolutely. And it's like, it's bringing in your representative for a date. And we don't want other people to do that. We want them to like bring their true self in to see if it's going to work.
Exactly.
So people pleasing is really preventing us from finding love and healthy relationships, because we're always bringing in the representative.
Yes. And it goes, it's like that thing where we meet people and then we're like, well, he was so different at the beginning, but how are you presenting yourself too,
Right. Absolutely. I think those are huge points.
The next one, the fourth one, would be you're depending on validation to feel good about yourself. So it really matters. And
other people's validation, right? What you mean by that is other people.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, other people's validation. So it really matters a lot to you, the opinion of your spouse. And I know that everyone, cares about their spouse's opinion, but you kind of rely on them to, are you okay if I go out? Like you kind of rely on them, for permission to do things, just to kind of get a sense of, I don't want this person to be mad at me. I want this person to really like me. So that drives you to do things out of guilt instead of really out of love. And I think that's the biggest like difference between, is this relationship right for me, or even in my dating life, even if I'm not yet in a relationship, am I doing this out of guilt or fear, or am I doing this just simply because it feels good to do it,
And it feels good to be yourself, right? Yeah. Like, who am I? What is important to me? What do I like to do? What kind of people do I feel alive around? Or what kind of people do I feel like I have to shrink around?
Yes. Definitely feeling good about yourself. Yeah. And then the last one would be, you may be attracting people who need to be rescued. Like they're just always putting their needs before yours. Like I think it's called rescue savior syndrome, where you feel like people have to, like, you have to keep answering the phone, and now you're a counselor to 10 different people, and you have to keep giving your money to your spouse or whatever that is. So that's a big common thing with people pleasers, whether it's emotionally, financially, or just feeling like, you just always need to be that person. It could be sexually as well. So just all of those things are common characteristics of people pleasers. And so once you make that shift of getting out of that toxic relationship and wanting to love yourself again, you have to establish boundaries in your life where you say, I am going to come first. My happiness is going to come first. If I'm saying yes to somebody else, what am I saying no to myself? And really taking up space and not feeling like you have to dim your light. If you're around someone and you constantly feel like you have to dim your light, that's a sign right there.
Huge sign. Yeah. Well, and because I know somebody listening might be like, oh, that seems like so selfish. But I think what we miss is that we're helping everyone else be selfish. Right? And it's like we're kind of playing by this different set of rules. Like your needs, your wants, your desires are important. My needs, my desires, my wants, my voice, my tiredness, my whatever isn't important.
Yeah.
Which, I'm always talking about playing by the same set of rules, and that piece of where it's like, gosh, how could both of those things be true? Everyone is important except for you. Like, is that the story you're telling yourself? How could that be true?
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. And I love that you said that. And it makes me think of also when we're getting into different relationships, whether it's a friendship or a romantic partner, you have to also take into consideration the thoughts that we tell ourselves. And I noticed that a lot of times with my clients, the ones who had the hardest time breaking free of that cycle of just toxic relationships in their life, they tend to say, I'm lonely or I'm bored a lot. Like those two words seem to be a sign for them to not really make the best decisions, if you will, when it comes to giving so much of themselves out of loneliness and out of boredom.
So there was an author, Sandra L. Brown, and she wrote How to Spot a Dangerous Man. And those are the two words she talks about as well. So you're not alone in having picked up on that, and like how, and then we were like, well, I'm just bored. So I'm just playing around with him. Like, I'm not really going to let him hurt me, but I'm bored. And it's like, girl, get a dog or a hobby.
Yes, exactly.
Loneliness is a little more tricky. I have a little more grace with loneliness than boredom, I think. But, it's still, we have this need for human connection. But, if you're bored, there's just so many things we can do with our lives and our times and our impact in the world rather than filling it up with a guy. Especially the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that you say you give more grace with loneliness, because especially during this pandemic, I'm so tired of being in the house with this dog, so it's just with those things. I would recommend, if someone is really feeling lonely and they also just got out of a relationship, whether it was toxic or just didn't work out for whatever reason, with loneliness, you also have to think about, okay, outside of doing the things that you love that you can't do right now because of the pandemic, what other ways could you really express yourself? Because even just hanging out with someone and being social and stuff, it's a great way to get rid of loneliness, but it has its negative effects if it's with the wrong person.
Yeah.
So I definitely recommend a lot of self-care and a lot of different ways to express yourself. Like for me, I love journaling. I do gratitude journaling every day. I love going out in the nature. In my shower, I have a eucalyptus plant right over the shower head, just so I can feel like I'm in a different place. And those things really take away the thoughts of loneliness if they ever come, things like that. And also reverse engineering the things that you've done well. So a lot of people in toxic relationships, they think, well, I don't even know if I should try to get a next relationship because the last 3 were horrible. And I'm like, well, who do you have the closest? Who is the closest person to you? And they may say their friend or their family member. And I'll ask them like, well, how do you think that relationship became your closest, and what makes it a good relationship? And when did it start becoming a better relationship? And just finding out the ways that you both respect each other's boundaries, that you both are there for each other, you're emotionally available for each other, is proof to yourself that you can have a healthy relationship. You can have a healthy relationship.
I love that. In reverse engineering, I love that language too, but that's what I say, who do you feel good around? Like who do you feel safe around? Who can you be yourself around?
Yes.
Now that's how your most intimate partner relationship should be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what version of you do you bring into those relationships? So what version of you do you need to bring into your romantic relationships, right?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I love that. You need more tips for loneliness. Those are good. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say in terms of loneliness, maybe just doing a brainstorm of activities, like having just your own bucket list of activities that you would love to do, that you would like to do, and something that you can do within the next couple of days. Just
Ooh,
to
okay. That's important because it's like, oh, I want to go to Paris, or I want to, climb Mount I don't even know the name, Kilimanjaro, is that right? One of those like crazy things on the bucket. I want to skydive, right? On the bucket list, but things you can do within the next couple of days. I love, or at least take a step on, right? Like,
yes,
maybe start a podcast, maybe start on your book, maybe, because you wouldn't be able to finish a book in 2 days, but you could start something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I love that. Yeah. What else? Those are great.
Yeah. So in terms of with talking about loneliness, like some more tips?
Yeah, anything, tips for getting over loneliness. And then we want to talk about overcoming people pleasing and go back to that for sure.
Yeah, and I think also if you're in a long period of loneliness and it really bothers you, another great thing you can do in terms of your self-exploration process. So you already thought of activities you can do. You already thought about self-care strategies that you can do, whether they're fancy stuff or on a budget. I think that it's still the same, whatever feels good to you. But I think the other thing that you can do is in that self-exploratory process, I call it just doing a 360 check. So you may write out things that you noticed about yourself in past relationships, like just connecting the dots. And then you might want to ask your female friends, what have you noticed about me, how I show up in these past relationships. And then if you have male friends that you're platonic with, definitely asking them. Like, for example, for me, in a toxic relationship that I was in, one of my male friends would say, you just care a little too much about their feelings. Like you don't even seem to have your voice anymore. And I'm like, for real, at first I didn't agree with it, but just taking a step back and saying like, okay, yeah, there have been so many times where I stopped everything just for this person, because they always had these crises that weren't really emergencies now that I think about it. But just really getting that 360 check of how you show up, so that you can have better insight, and so that you also know your blind spots, and also notice that maybe I'm not really lonely. Maybe I just need more information about who I am, so that I know what I can do and how I can love better and myself better.
I so much agree with you. And, when people talk about like even the phrase like toxic person proof, that doesn't mean like I have all the answers. It means, or that anyone else is going to have like all the answers on toxic people. It's like being self-aware enough to cover your blind spots.
Yes.
And knowing what I know personally what my blind spots are. And when that situation comes up, if I'm too emotionally connected to the situation, right? Like emotionally, that's why, people like, oh, I give great advice to my friends. But when it's my own advice, like I, take bad advice or can't see it for myself. That's the emotional blind spots that you need backup on. And before I got married with my husband, Ben, I went to all my friends and said, is there anything I complain about him that I don't realize I'm complaining, or anything I'm saying that I don't realize, and they all kind of came back with the same answer, and it wasn't that bad. And I was like, well, sounds good, but it was literally getting my friends together before getting into this, committing my life to someone and saying, is there any blind spots I'm missing?
I love that. And I think that with you also knowing your blind spots, you're definitely setting yourself up to feel safer and to feel more secure, and not looking for that validation and that constant secure and reassurance from your partner. Like, of course you want those things, but you're not relying on that as a measure as to how you should live your life and how you should show up.
Because if everyone else is always getting to create the finish line for you, like they get to define what success is, then they can always move it to get you to keep working.
Yes.
Which is what toxic people do, right? So what are some steps people can take? We've talked about overcoming loneliness. What are some steps people can take to overcome people pleasing so they can love themselves again after a toxic relationship?
Yeah, great question. Let's start with the conversations, especially when you have those people in your life. I know I have family members I'm thinking of right now.
And that's important, because we're not just talking about romantic relationships at this, and that's a really important distinction. So yeah.
Yeah, if they're asking anything, whether it's your time, your money, anything, and you feel that pressure to respond, I would love for you to pause and say, let me get back to you on that. And just register into your body that you're pausing. It lets your brain stop being on automatic all the time. Like, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can. So it's just taking a pause for a couple of seconds and saying, let me get back to you on that. Shows your power in that sense. And that other person, because really when someone is being needy to us, it's also like they're trying to control you in a way. They may not do it in a way that a very demanding person or aggressive person may do, but if they're just always asking something for you, they're expecting for you to fulfill that. So you really put we set boundaries, not just of telling people no, but our body language, our tone, our taking that pause, and talking slower, and just really feeling our words when we say it, instead of just feeling like, let me just say yes so that they won't be mad at me.
Great distinction. Yeah. Or with a toxic person, right? Like healthy people are like, let me get back to you on that. And it's like, okay, cool. Toxic people are like, what? You're so selfish. What are you thinking? You should, what kind of person, what kind of friend doesn't this? What kind of partner doesn't this? What kind of daughter doesn't this? Right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, another way would be to, if you're not face to face with somebody and you can't give an answer right there, you can delay texting. So delaying just that immediate, like that urge to immediately respond, is a powerful way to do that.
It's so perfect. It's great advice. And we don't think about it as loving ourselves as like, give it an hour before you text back. Like that is self-love, is giving it an hour. So you are getting out of that automatic phase. And I love that. Yes. And I agree with you completely.
Yeah. And then also, if someone, like, let's say that you are with a man, whether he's your someone you're dating, or you've been in a long-term commitment, and he's asking you to do something uncomfortable, just being straight up and saying like, I don't really feel comfortable doing that. Just sticking to that, being firm with that, and also understanding that no is a complete sentence. You don't always have to give somebody a reason as to why you say no. If it makes you feel better, and I know that sometimes that is really hard for people, so I want to speak to the people that, that is really hard to do. You can offer an alternative. So you say,
Ooh,
I'm not
yes.
gonna do that date, but how about next Monday?
Great.
Right there.
Perfect. Yeah, agree completely. Oh my gosh. Okay. So no is a complete sentence. Offer an alternative. I can't do that, but I'd be willing to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That is self-love. That is getting out of people pleasing. That is learning you again, because it's also, what can I do? It's not that savior complex. I can do all the things for all the people and they'll all love me for it. Right. But creating that safe space to be you.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
love that. Tori, tell people where they can find more about you, more about your work, and the gifts you bring to the world.
Yeah, so I am a self-love and relationship coach, and so I'm currently running a self-love coach group coaching program that's 8 weeks, and it's been going so great. It's my first time running it, and if you just want general information on healthy relationships, I do have a free checklist that you can get on my Instagram bio at Tori Autumn Coaching, and then my website is tautumncoaching.com.
Awesome. So give us one last smackdown of wisdom, right? If it was like, oh, what is like the one thing I wish everybody knew about healthy relationships or life after a toxic relationship?
You know what's been so important to me lately, Sarah? The word permission. Like just giving
Mm,
yourself permission to do things that you want is really the biggest struggle. It's not actually doing that thing or actually
I
saying
agree.
no. It's just saying, and because really what's happening when you dealing with something, you're like, am I even allowed to say no to that? Yes, you are. If it feels good to you, yes, you can. We have to be mindful that we have so much of our time controlled that we need to be able to control our time and our energy, and that takes a lot of inner work, but just giving yourself permission to be in that healthy relationship, and to leave the people behind who aren't benefiting your self-love and your growth. So that word permission.
So actually in my coaching program, I have women write permission notes, right? So it's like, dear Sarah, I give you permission to, you know, to have an alternative, if you feel uncomfortable with the situation, or I give you permission to wait an hour before responding. So we just aligned on so many things. Tori, thank you for sharing with the audience.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That is amazing. I enjoyed
Oh,
the interview with you.
I love it. Well, thank you for helping us on our journey to become toxic person proof.
Yes.